The afternoon sun in Memphis was a heavy golden blanket, draping itself over the parked cars and the lazy green leaves of the oak trees. Elvis Presley, or just Elvis, as the entire world knew him, felt its warmth on his face as he stepped out of his car. He wasn't at Graceland today. He was in a quiet, forgotten corner of town. A little park with an old-fashioned gazebo and a pond where ducks paddled in slow circles. He was tired. Not physically tired. Not exactly. It was more a tiredness of the soul, a weariness that came from being Elvis all the time. Every step, every word, every glance was analyzed, celebrated, or criticized. The crowds, the demands, the constant roar of fame. It was a beautiful monster that had consumed his life. Sometimes he just wanted to be a regular guy, to walk unnoticed, to breathe without someone holding a microphone to his face. Today he tried his best to achieve that. He wore a simple dark suit, no flashy rhinestones, no wide collars. His hair was styled, of course, but not piled quite so high. He'd even put on a pair of sunglasses, hoping to blend in. It was a foolish hope. He knew, even in a disguise, the way he moved, the undeniable aura that clung to him usually gave him away. But he yearned for a moment of peace, a quiet hum. Instead of a roaring symphony, he found an empty bench near the pond, a little bit away from the few families scattered about. He watched a young boy throw breadcrumbs to the ducks, his laughter echoing across the water. A soft breeze rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of cut grass and blooming magnolias. For a few precious minutes, Elvis felt something akin to calm settle over him. He closed his eyes, soaking in the sun and the quiet. Then a voice, gentle and a little reedy with age, broke the spell. "Well, now look at you," it said. Elvis opened his eyes. Standing a few feet away was an old woman. She had a kind, crinkled face, framed by soft white hair, pulled back in a neat bun. Her eyes, a bright, startling blue, twinkled with a mixture of amusement and curiosity. She wore a simple floral dress and held a worn handbag clutched in her hands. She looked entirely harmless, and yet his heart instinctively tensed. Here it came, he thought. The recognition, the request for an autograph, the sudden crowd. "Lost your way, son?" she asked, a small smile playing on her lips. Elvis blinked. Lost his way? That wasn't the usual opening. He removed his sunglasses slowly, his famous blue eyes meeting hers. He expected the gasp, the widening of her eyes, the sudden realization, but it didn't come. Her smile simply broadened. "Oh my word," she said, chuckling softly. "You look just like him, you really do. From certain angles I could swear you were the man himself." Elvis stared at her. She thought he was an impersonator. An impersonator, a surge of something he hadn't felt in years. Genuine, unadulterated surprise washed over him. He almost laughed. Here he was the king, longing for a moment of normalcy, and this sweet old lady had just handed it to him on a silver platter. She didn't see Elvis Presley global phenomenon. She saw a young man who looked just like him. It was an unexpected gift, and in that instant a mischievous spark ignited within him. "You really think so?" he asked, trying to keep his voice even a little bit humble. He pitched it lower than his usual stage voice, softening the edges. "Oh, honey, absolutely," she declared, taking a step closer. "The hair, the eyes, even that little curl that falls onto your forehead. You're a dead ringer. You must be one of the good ones, too. Not like those fellas who just put on a silly wig and think that's enough." She shook her head disapprovingly at the thought of bad impersonators. Elvis found himself smiling, a real, unforced smile. "It felt good. I try my best," he said, playing along. "It's an honor, you know, to try and bring back a little bit of that magic." Her eyes softened. She chuckled again, a wistful sound. Elvis felt a warmth spread through his chest. She wasn't asking for anything, wasn't screaming, wasn't demanding. She was just sharing a memory, a genuine piece of her life connected to his music. It was pure, untainted appreciation. It was a different kind of magic, one he hadn't experienced in years. "What's your name, dear?" she asked, her blue eyes still twinkling. "You must have a stage name, something catchy." He hesitated for only a second. His mind raced for something believable, something simple. He thought of his middle name, which he rarely used publicly. "Just Aaron," he said, offering his hand. "Aaron Smith." She took his hand in hers. Her grip was surprisingly firm, her skin soft and cool. "Aaron Smith," she repeated thoughtfully. "Well, Aaron, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Eleanor Mae." "Eleanor Mae," Elvis echoed, liking the sound of it. He felt lighter, as if a great weight had been lifted from his shoulders. For the first time in what felt like forever, he wasn't Elvis Presley, the legend. He was just Aaron Smith, an impersonator who'd stumbled upon a kind old woman in a park, and it was wonderful. "You have a real gift, Aaron," Eleanor Mae continued, still holding his hand, "to make an old lady like me believe even for a moment that he's truly here. Do you perform often? Are you headed to a show now?" Elvis chuckled, a genuine laugh bubbling up from deep inside him. "No show today, Eleanor Mae," he said, shaking his head. "Just enjoying the quiet. I sometimes come to places like this just to get a feel for things. You know what people connect with." Eleanor Mae nodded knowingly. "Ah, method acting then, very dedicated. That's what makes a true artist, Aaron. Not just mimicking the moves, but feeling the spirit." She squeezed his hand one last time before letting go. "You've certainly got the spirit, dear, I can tell." He looked at her truly, looked at her and saw not a fan, not a stranger, but a gentle soul who saw something special in him, even if it wasn't the exact truth. He saw a chance to connect with someone on a level that had become impossible in his famous life. He saw a quiet adventure, a brief escape. "Thank you, Eleanor Mae," he said, his voice soft with sincerity. "That means a lot." He knew with a sudden certainty that he was going to play along. He didn't know for how long or where this little charade would lead, but he felt an undeniable pull. This was more interesting, more fulfilling than sitting alone in Graceland, lost in the echo of his own fame. This was real. Eleanor Mae smiled again, a warm, knowing smile. "Well, Aaron Smith," she said, turning to leave, "you keep up the good work. Don't let anyone tell you you're just an imitation. You're something special." And as she walked away, a little slower than she had arrived, Elvis sat on the bench, watching her go. He reached up and touched the little curl of hair on his forehead, a faint smile on his lips. "Aaron Smith," he murmured to himself. It sounded peaceful. For the first time, in a long time, he felt a genuine flicker of joy. The king of rock and roll was off duty. Aaron Smith, the impersonator, had just begun his most important performance. Eleanor Mae's words stayed with Elvis, or rather Aaron Smith, long after she had walked out of the park. "Yours something special." It was a common phrase he heard from fans, but from Eleanor Mae it felt different. It wasn't about his celebrity, his music, or his wealth. It was about the essence she perceived in him, the dedication to his craft, even if that craft was, in her mind, imitation. The simple, honest validation felt like a cool drink on a hot day. He found himself returning to the park the next day, and the day after that it became a quiet ritual. He would sit on the same bench, read a newspaper, or just watch the world go by. And almost always, Eleanor Mae would appear. Sometimes she brought a book, sometimes just a small bag with birdseed for the ducks. Their conversations started small, about the weather, the park, or the antics of the local squirrels. "Aaron," she'd say, her blue eyes sparkling, "you're here again. Still, researching." He'd nod, a small smile playing on his lips. "Just enjoying the peace, Eleanor Mae, and the good company?" She'd pat his arm lightly. "You're a sweet boy, Aaron. Not many young men take the time to chat with an old woman." Elvis, Aaron would feel a pang. Sweet boy. He was 40, a global icon. Yet here, he was simply a sweet boy. It was disarming, humbling, and surprisingly comforting. He found himself genuinely looking forward to these daily meetings. They were a refuge from the pressures of his life, a bubble of normalcy, where the world's expectations faded away. One afternoon, Eleanor Mae brought a small, worn photo album with her. She sat beside him on the bench, carefully placing the album on her lap. "You know, Aaron," she began, her voice softer than usual, "your impersonation. It brings back so many memories for me, especially today." She gently opened the album to a faded black and white picture. It showed a handsome young man in a military uniform, smiling broadly, his arm around the blushing young woman. "That's my Frank," she said, her voice filled with tenderness. "My husband. He was serving overseas when Elvis first burst onto the scene. We used to write letters back and forth. He'd always asked me about the new music. He loved the energy, even though he was a classical man." Through and through, Elvis leaned closer, intrigued. This was her heart, laid bare. When Frank came home, Eleanor Mae continued, tracing a finger over the photo. "Our first proper date was to a picture show. It was Love Me Tender. Oh, Aaron, I remember it like it was. Yes, Bank held my hand the whole time, and when Elvis sang that song, well, it just melted my heart. It became our song. It was the song we danced to at our wedding too." A year later, Elvis felt a lump form in his throat. He had sung "Love Me Tender" countless times. But he'd never heard a story quite like this. He'd known his music touched people, of course, but hearing it directly from someone, seeing the raw emotion in their eyes, was powerful beyond measure. It wasn't about record sales or chart positions. It was about love, memory, and life itself. "Passed on a few years ago," Eleanor Mae said softly, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. She quickly wiped them away with a tissue from her purse. "But whenever I hear that song or see someone like you who reminds me of him, it brings him right back." She gave him a watery smile. "So thank you, Aaron. Thank you for keeping that memory alive." Elvis reached out almost instinctively and gently patted her hand. He didn't say anything. What could he say? "I'm the man who sang that song, Eleanor Mae." That would shatter the fragile, beautiful bubble they had built. It would turn a moment of genuine connection into a spectacle, a fan encounter. He couldn't bring himself to do it, not now. Instead, he just held her hand, offering comfort through silence. He felt a profound sense of purpose in that moment, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. It wasn't about pleasing millions. It was about comforting one kind soul. It was about acknowledging the impact his music had, not on the charts, but on individual lives. "You know," Eleanor Mae said after a moment, pulling her hand away and dabbing her eyes, "you have his tenderness too. Not just the looks, but that gentle way about you. I bet you're a good man, Aaron." He swallowed hard. "I try to be Eleanor Mae," he said, his voice a little hoarse. He thought of his own relationships, the struggles, the loneliness, the way fame often complicated true connection. He wondered if he truly was a good man, or just a lonely one trying his best. But in Eleanor Mae's eyes he saw only acceptance. "Say, Aaron," she said, her mood brightening somewhat, "are you busy this Friday evening?" Elvis blinked. "Friday?" he asked, caught off guard. His calendar, normally packed weeks in advance, was suddenly open in his mind. He had no official engagements, just the usual security details, manager calls, and the weight of being Elvis. "Yes," she chirped. "Our community center, the Oakwood Hall, is having its monthly senior social. And this month it's a Remembering the 50s theme. We usually have a DJ, but I was thinking if you're not booked, would you consider coming? Just for a little while you could sing a song or two." She clasped her hands together, her blue eyes wide with hope. Elvis's mind reeled. Perform as an impersonator, in front of a room full of people who, like Eleanor Mae, would instantly recognize the face, if not the truth behind it. The thought was absurd. It was dangerous. It could unravel everything. But then, he looked at Eleanor Mae, at the genuine warmth and anticipation in her eyes. He thought of Frank, of "Love Me Tender," of the quiet peace he'd found in these past few days. Thought of the endless cycle of fame, the demands, the empty praise. This was different. This was real appreciation, unburdened by the weight of his name, and then a crazy, thrilling thought solidified in his mind. Why not? This was a chance to perform for the sheer joy of it, for an audience that saw him through fresh, innocent eyes. This was a chance to give back in a way that felt authentic, not like a duty. He took a deep breath. "Eleanor Mae," he said, a genuine smile spreading across his face. "I'd be honored." Her face lit up like a Christmas tree. "Oh, Aaron, you angel, this is going to be just wonderful." She clapped her hands together, a sound like dry leaves rustling. "I'll tell Agnes and Harold right away. They'll be so thrilled." As Eleanor Mae bustled away, humming a happy tune, Elvis leaned back on the bench. He had just agreed to perform as an impersonator for a group of seniors. Him, Elvis Presley, the king. It was completely insane. And yet, for the first time in a long time, he felt a thrill of excitement, a sense of anticipation that had nothing to do with fame or money. He was embarking on an adventure, a secret life, and it felt exhilarating. He wondered what songs Eleanor Mae would want him to sing. He'd have to practice, just to be sure he sounded authentic. The irony was delicious. The days leading up to Friday evening felt surprisingly long for Elvis. His mind, usually buzzing with recording schedules, concert plans, and the demands of his entourage, was now fixated on a community hall performance. He found himself humming old tunes, trying to recall the exact inflections, the subtle vocal shifts that were uniquely him. It was a strange kind of rehearsal, playing himself for an audience who believed he was someone else. He went back to the park, of course. Eleanor Mae was there, brimming with excitement. "Aaron," she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling. "I've told everyone. Agnes is bringing her best chocolate chip cookies, and Harold promised to dust off his old dancing shoes. They're all so excited to meet you." He felt a pang of guilt. These people were genuinely looking forward to this. They were preparing. He was spinning a yarn, albeit a harmless, heart-warming one. But looking at Eleanor Mae's joyful face, the guilt faded, replaced by a renewed determination to make this a truly special evening for her. "I hope I don't disappoint them," he said, trying for a humble tone. "Oh, nonsense." She waved her hand dismissively. "You could just stand there and look pretty and they'd be happy. But I know you'll do more than that, Aaron. You got that certain something." That something was the weight of global fame, the talent born of relentless practice and raw genius, and a life lived under a spotlight. To Eleanor Mae, it was simply his spirit, his dedication. He found he preferred her interpretation. He spent the next few days preparing. He chose a simple classic outfit, a tailored black suit, white shirt, and a dark tie. No sequins, no jumpsuits. He wanted to evoke the early Elvis, the one Eleanor Mae and her friends would remember from their youth. He even found an old guitar, unstrung for years, and spent hours cleaning it, polishing its worn wood until it gleamed. He wouldn't be playing it, but it would complete the look. Friday evening arrived, and Elvis felt a peculiar mix of nerves and exhilaration. He drove his modest, discreet car to the address Eleanor Mae had given him, the Oakwood Community Hall. It was a simple brick building, lights spilling from its windows, already buzzing with activity. Parked a little way down the street, took a deep breath and adjusted his tie. Aaron Smith was ready. As he walked towards the entrance, he could hear the faint strains of music, old swing tunes playing. He pushed open the heavy wooden door and stepped inside. The hall was decorated with streamers and balloons, a makeshift dance floor in the center, and tables covered with checkered tablecloths. A small stage was set up at one end, adorned with a banner that read, "50s Flashback Fun." The room was filled with the cheerful chatter of seniors, their laughter mingling with the music. The aroma of coffee and freshly baked goods hung in the air. This was a world away from the glamorous high-stakes venues he was used to. It was genuine, warm, and inviting. He scanned the room and quickly spotted Eleanor Mae. She was at a table near the stage, animatedly talking to two other women. She looked up, saw him, and her face lit up. She waved enthusiastically, practically bouncing in her seat. "Aaron, you made it," she exclaimed, rushing towards him. "Oh, you look just splendid. Doesn't he, girls?" she called back to her friends, who were now craning their necks to get a better look. Elvis felt a blush creep up his neck. He was used to adoring screams, not polite appraisals from septuagenarians. "Hello, Eleanor Mae," he said, offering her a warm smile. "It's good to be here." Eleanor Mae took his arm and practically dragged him to her table. "Agnes, Betty, this is Aaron Smith, the young man I told you about, the wonderful Elvis impersonator." Agnes, a stout woman with an impressive beehive hairdo, squinted at him. "Well, I'll be," she said, her eyes widening. Eleanor wasn't kidding. "You really do favor him, dear, especially around the eyes." Betty, a petite lady with spectacles perched on her nose, nodded vigorously. "The spitting image. It's uncanny. Truly, you must spend hours in front of the mirror." Elvis chuckled. "A little bit of practice helps," he mumbled, feeling a little awkward under their intense scrutiny. It was strange to be praised for looking like himself. Sit, Aaron," Eleanor Mae urged, pulling out a chair for him. "Have some punch." Agnes made her famous butter cookies. He sat down, suddenly feeling more relaxed. These were just friendly people, eager to share a pleasant evening. The pressure of being Elvis melted away, replaced by the simple joy of being Aaron, a guest at a community gathering. Chatted with the women, listening to their stories about growing up in Memphis, their memories of the 50s, and their enduring love for Elvis Presley. He learned that Agnes had once seen Elvis perform at the Overton Park Shell way back in '54, before he was famous. She described the raw energy, the way he moved, the excitement that crackled through the crowd. "He just had something, you know," Agnes said, her eyes distant, reliving the memory. "Something electric. You just knew he was going to be big. You could feel it." Elvis listened, nodding, a strange mix of pride and humility washing over him. It was a rare gift to hear his own history recounted by those who had lived through it without the filter of media or celebrity. He saw himself through their eyes, the young, hungry artist, full of fire and dreams. "Well, Aaron," Eleanor Mae announced after a while, patting his arm, "it's almost time. The DJ is about to announce you." His heart gave a little thump. This was it, the moment of truth. He stood up, adjusted his jacket, and picked up the polished, unstrung guitar he'd brought as a prop. "DJ," a portly man with a booming voice tapped the microphone. "All right, folks, can I have your attention, please? As you know, tonight is our 50s flashback fun night. And we have a very special treat for you all. Our very own Eleanor Mae has pulled some strings and brought us one of the best in the business. Please give a huge Oakwood Hall welcome to Aaron Smith, the sensational Elvis tribute artist." A ripple of applause, mixed with excited murmurs, spread through the room. Elvis, as Aaron walked towards the stage, the guitar feeling familiar in his hands. He mounted the steps, feeling the familiar anticipation of a crowd. It was a smaller crowd than he was used to, certainly, but no less eager. He stood center stage, took a deep breath, and looked out at the faces looking back at him. He saw Eleanor Mae beaming in the front row. He saw Agnes and Betty, eyes wide with expectation. He saw dozens of other kind, hopeful faces. This was a chance to give back, to share joy, to connect in a way that truly mattered. He put on his best, most confident smile. He raised the guitar, striking a pose that was so inherently him, yet felt fresh and new tonight. "Good evening, everyone," he said, letting his voice fill the hall, a little lower, a little more controlled than his usual stage roar. but undeniably smooth and captivating. It's a real honor to be here tonight, celebrating the greatest era of music with all of you. A few claps, some enthusiastic whoops. He felt a wave of warmth. This wasn't about fame tonight. It was about pure, simple performance. And for the first time in a long time, he felt truly, genuinely excited to sing Elvis, as Aaron took a moment to let the gentle applause die down. He felt a different kind of energy in this room, a soft hum instead of the usual electrifying roar. He saw familiar faces from the park, smiles of recognition and anticipation. This wasn't a concert for thousands. It was a gathering of friends, a cozy reunion with memories. "Eleanor Mae told me you all loved the 50s, he began, his voice warm and inviting, a subtle southern drawl hinting at his origin. "And nobody defines the 50s quite like the king, right?" A few cheers, a general murmur of agreement. He winked, a classic Elvis gesture. "So, I thought we'd start with something that takes us right back. A little number about a place you never want to be." He didn't need a band. He didn't need elaborate lighting or a powerful sound system. He just needed his voice. He took a breath, closed his eyes for a split second, and then the familiar opening notes of Heartbreak Hotel filled the hall. He didn't just sing it. He felt it. The raw loneliness, the desperate plea in the lyrics. He swayed subtly, his hands gripping the unstrung guitar, his body moving with the rhythm he felt deep inside. The room fell silent. People leaned forward in their chairs, some closing their eyes, lost in the music. He saw Eleanor Mae, a tear tracking down her cheek, a soft smile on her lips. She wasn't just hearing a song, she was reliving a lifetime of memories that moved him more than any stadium full of screaming fans ever could. He transitioned smoothly into Love Me Tender, the song Eleanor Mae had spoken of so fondly, poured all his tenderness into the lyrics, his voice a soft caress. He looked directly at Eleanor Mae as he sang, and her smile widened, her eyes shining with pure joy. He thought of Frank, her husband, and tried to infuse the song with the love and longing she had described. He wasn't singing it for himself. He was singing it for them, for their memories, for the ghost of a dance on a wedding night next. Hound dog. He injected a playful swagger, a cheeky grin, a subtle hip sway that elicited chuckles and appreciative claps. The audience loosened up, some tapping their feet, a few even attempting to snap their fingers in time. He saw a couple in the back start a slow, joyful dance. He remembered Agnes's story about seeing him at Overton Park Shell, and he felt a kinship with that younger version of himself, the one who just wanted to sing and connect. He wasn't performing as Elvis Presley, the legend. He was performing as Aaron Smith, the impersonator, who loved the music and wanted to bring a little bit of happiness. And that freedom, that lack of external pressure, allowed him to tap into a deeper well of emotion, to sing with a purity he hadn't accessed in years. He felt the music flowing through him, not as a performance, but as an offering. He sang for about 20 minutes, a medley of hits that spanned his early career. All shook up jailhouse rock, and a soulful rendition of Can't Help Falling in Love. With each song, he could feel the connection growing. People were singing along, some mouthing the words, others softly humming. The hall was filled with smiles, with gentle swaying, with the quiet joy of shared nostalgia. When he finished, the applause was heartfelt and genuine. It wasn't thunderous, but it was warm, filled with affection and gratitude. People stood up clapping, some wiping away tears. "Thank you, Aaron," someone called out. "You're amazing," another voice cried. He bowed, a deep, respectful bow. "Thank you all so much," he said, his voice husky with emotion. "It's been a true pleasure singing for you tonight." He looked at Eleanor Mae, who was wiping her eyes again, a radiant smile on her face. She gave him a silent thumbs up. He stepped off the stage, and immediately he was surrounded. Not mobbed, not overwhelmed, but gently approached people, wanted to shake his hand to thank him personally. "You really nailed? Can't help falling in love, son," a man with a handlebar mustache said, gripping his arm. "My wife and I, we just melted." "My granddaughter, she thinks you're the real deal," a woman chuckled, nudging a shy teenager beside her. The girl blushed and giggled. He spent the next hour mingling, listening to more stories, answering gentle questions about his career as an impersonator. He learned about their lives, their families, their own connections to his music. He heard about first dates, long road trips, and comforting times when his songs were the backdrop. He signed a few autographs, writing Aaron Smith with a flourish, enjoying the novelty of it. He felt like he was living a dual life, and the secret made it all the more intriguing. Agnes, the woman who'd seen him at Overton Park, approached him with a plate piled high with chocolate chip cookies. "Here, Aaron," she said, her eyes twinkling. "You earned these. You were truly something special tonight. Made me feel like I was back in '54 again." "Thank you, Agnes," he said, taking a cookie. It was warm and deliciously guided him to a quieter corner. "Aaron," she whispered, her voice full of emotion. That was more beautiful than I could have imagined. You didn't just sing the songs, dear. You felt them. You made him come alive for us tonight." For me, he looked at her, his heart full. "It was an honor, Eleanor Mae." He said sincerely, "Truly thank you for inviting me. You brought so much joy, and you know," she leaned in conspiratorially, "you sing better than half those fellas who claim to be the best impersonator. Your voice, it's just got that rich, soulful quality. It's like you were made to sing those songs." He managed a small smile. If only she knew he was made to sing those songs. They were born from his very soul. And tonight he had rediscovered the simple, pure joy of sharing that soul with others without the blinding glare of fame. He was just Aaron, a man with a voice bringing happiness to a small room of kind people. It was a refreshing, almost sacred experience. As he drove away from Oakwood Hall later that night, leaving behind the echoes of laughter and applause, he felt lighter than he had in years. The performance had been a secret act of grace, a quiet testament to the enduring power of music and the simple beauty of human connection. The success of the Oakwood Hall performance was more profound for Elvis than any sold-out stadium tour. He'd gone there expecting to simply play along to enjoy the novelty. What he found was a deep well of genuine connection, a chance to see his music through the eyes of those it truly touched, unmarred by the trappings of celebrity. Eleanor Mae had called him the next day, her voice still buzzing with excitement. "Aaron," she'd chirped, "everyone is still talking about you. Agnes said it was the best social they've ever had. You simply must come again." He readily agreed. He found himself craving their quiet conversations, their unassuming company. He still visited the park, and sometimes Eleanor Mae would invite him back to Oakwood Hall for informal gatherings. A bingo game, a potluck lunch. He wouldn't perform every time. Sometimes just sitting and chatting, listening to their stories. It was during one of these quieter afternoons over cups of lukewarm tea and store-bought cookies in the community center's small lounge that Eleanor Mae shared more of her past. Agnes and Betty were there too, contributing their own memories. "You know," Eleanor Mae began stirring her tea slowly, "we grew up in simpler times. Not always easier, mind you, but simpler. You knew your neighbors. You relied on each other." Betty nodded. "That's right, and music. It was everything. No TVs. In every room. No internet. You gathered around the radio, or you went to a dance. Or you went to church," Agnes added, "and sang your heart out." Eleanor Mae's gaze drifted, focusing on something distant. "I remember when Frank was gone during the war. It was so hard, so many of us just waiting, praying for letters. You felt so alone sometimes, even with family around." She paused, her voice softening. "But then, Elvis came along years later, of course after Frank was home. But his music, it had a certain honesty to it. A kind of melancholy even in the upbeat songs that spoke to you. Elvis listened intently. It was a constant companion in his own life, a shadow even amidst the brightest lights. To hear it articulated and understood by someone like Eleanor Mae felt like a balm, his gospel songs especially. Eleanor Mae continued, "They truly touched my soul. After Frank passed, there were days. His gospel music, which he poured his heart into, often felt overshadowed by his rock and roll hits. But to Eleanor Mae, it was a lifeline, a source of solace in her darkest hours. This was the true impact of his art. Not the fame, but the connection, the comfort, the healing. He thought of his own spiritual journey, his own struggles with faith, his desperate search for peace. He realized that in singing those gospel songs, he wasn't just performing. He was sharing a piece of his deepest self, a piece that resonated with Eleanor Mae's own spiritual needs. He always sang with such conviction," Agnes chimed in. "You could tell he believed every word. It wasn't just a performance. It was from the heart." Betty leaned forward, her eyes bright. And his humility, too, for such a big star. He always seemed so grateful, like he never forgot where he came from. Elvis shifted uncomfortably. Though he managed to maintain his Aaron persona, he did try to be grateful. He did believe in his music, especially his gospel music. Constant demands, the isolating bubble of fame, sometimes made it hard to remember that humility, to connect with that gratitude. This conversation was a stark reminder of who he truly wanted to be, stripped of all the external pressures. "It sounds like his music was a real comfort to you," Elvis said, directing his gaze back to Eleanor Mae. She nodded slowly, a faraway look in her eyes. "More than comfort, Aaron. It was a friend when I felt utterly alone. It was a reminder of joy when I thought joy was gone forever. It's funny, isn't it? A man I never met, who the airwaves became such an integral part of my life story. And you, Aaron, you bring that back. You remind me of all of it. That's a very special gift." He realized that his role as Aaron Smith wasn't just a harmless deception. It was a unique opportunity. He was getting to witness the true unfiltered impact of his work, to hear stories from the heart of his audience. He was seeing the human side of his legacy, the individual threads that made up the vast tapestry of his fame. He saw the deep respect in their eyes, not for the celebrity but for the essence of the music and for the spirit they believed he embodied. It made him feel more connected to his art, more purposeful than he had in years. He realized he wasn't just playing along for fun anymore. He was learning. He was growing. He was seeing himself and his life's work through a completely different lens. The stories Eleanor Mae and her friends shared were far more meaningful than any article in a fan magazine or any review from a music critic. The reason he sang, and as he left the community center that day, the weight of his secret felt less like a burden and more like a cherished treasure. He was still Elvis Presley, the king, but he was also Aaron Smith, a man who, through a beautiful twist of fate, was helping an old woman unpack her past, and in doing so was rediscovering his own purpose. As weeks turned into months, Elvis's visits to the community hall in the park became an integral part of his life. The Aaron Smith persona wasn't just a disguise anymore. It was a space where he could be genuinely himself, unburdened by expectation. He found a quiet joy in helping Eleanor Mae with small things, carrying her groceries from her car to her apartment, fixing a squeaky hinge on the community hall door, or simply listening without interruption. He'd call her from a payphone just to ensure his private lines wouldn't be traced. Making excuses like "my mobile signal is terrible out here." He'd learned her routine, the days she played bingo, the mornings she went to the library. He never planned his visits to coincide with his own public schedule, carefully carving out pockets of time where he could simply be Aaron One sunny Tuesday, he found Eleanor Mae struggling with a flat tire on her bicycle in the park. She was looking at it with a frustrated sigh, her shoulders slunk. "Oh, Aaron," she said, spotting him approach, "my lucky day. This old contraption just doesn't want to cooperate." Elvis knelt beside the bike, examining the tire. "Looks like a slow leak, Eleanor Mae. Do you have a pump anywhere?" "In the basket," she gestured. "But I don't think it'll do much good. I'm not as strong as I used to be." Without a word, Elvis took the small hand pump. It was a simple task, but he approached it with a quiet focus, pushing air into the tire with steady, rhythmic strokes. He felt the muscles in his arms work a different kind of exertion than the adrenaline-fueled performances he was used to. It was satisfying, tangible. Eleanor Mae watched him, a soft smile on her face. "You're a handy young man. Aaron, you remind me of Frank. He was always good with his hands, too, could fix anything." He paused, feeling a warm blush spread across his face. He wasn't particularly handy in his celebrity life. There were always people to do things for him. But here, with Eleanor Mae, he found a quiet satisfaction in these simple acts of service. He finished pumping the tire, then gave the wheel a spin to check it. "There you go," he said, standing up. "It should hold for a while. You might want to get it properly patched later, though." "Oh, thank you, Aaron," she exclaimed, her eyes bright with gratitude. "You're a lifesaver. I was dreading having to walk this all the way home." "It was nothing," he replied genuinely. It truly felt like nothing compared to the demands of his usual life. Yet it felt infinitely more rewarding. Their conversations grew deeper, too. He learned about her life before Frank, her dreams of being a schoolteacher cut short by the Depression. He heard about her joy in raising her children, the quiet sorrow of losing them to different cities and busy lives. He became a confidant, a presence she clearly cherished. He, in turn, found himself sharing small, carefully edited snippets of his own life. He spoke of the pressures of his impersonation career, the constant travel, the loneliness of being on the road. He talked about missing home, about the yearning for a simpler life. He couched these truths in the language of an impersonator, but the emotions behind them were utterly real. "It must be hard, Aaron," Eleanor Mae said one day as they sat on their usual park bench sharing a thermos of iced tea she'd brought. "Always having to be on, always having to live up to someone else's image. Do you ever just want to be yourself?" The question hung in the air, poignant and true. He looked out at the pond, where the ducks glided serenely. "More than anything, Eleanor Mae," he admitted softly, "sometimes I just wish I could walk into a store without being recognized, or talk to someone without them, expecting a performance." She nodded, her wise blue eyes understanding. "That's the price of talent, I suppose, but don't you ever forget, Aaron, that the real you, the one sitting here drinking tea with an old woman, that's a good man, a kind man. And that's worth more than all the fame in the world." His heart swelled. She saw him, not Elvis Presley, the king, but Aaron Smith, the man. It was a level of acceptance and affection he hadn't experienced from anyone outside his closest family in years. His mother, God rest her soul, had seen him that way. But since her passing, the world had mostly seen the icon, not the individual. Eleanor Mae was a refreshing, grounding presence in his often chaotic life. He began to notice the small details of her life, the fading photographs on her mantelpiece, when he occasionally visited her apartment, the way she always kept a fresh rose in a vase by her window. He saw the quiet dignity of her age, the wisdom etched in her lines, the resilience in her spirit. He felt a genuine affection for her, an affection that went beyond the charade. He wanted to protect her, to bring her joy, to simply be there for her. The secret was still there, a soft hum beneath their interactions, but it no longer felt like a burden. It felt like a precious shared intimacy, a private world where he could shed the heavy mantle of fame and simply be human. He understood now that this unexpected encounter wasn't just a brief escape. It was a profound lesson. It was teaching him about simplicity, about genuine connection, about the enduring power of music to touch lives, not just thrill audiences. He was rediscovering the purity of his passion, the very reason he started singing in the first place long before the crowds in the millions. And it was all thanks to Eleanor Mae, who saw not the king, but a kind impersonator named Aaron. The more time Elvis spent as Aaron Smith, the more comfortable he became in this dual existence. He had established a rhythm: park visits, tea at Eleanor Mae's apartment, the occasional senior social. He even had a small discreet phone for calling Eleanor Mae, keeping his Graceland life separate from his Oakwood Hall life. But the world as he knew had a way of intruding. It happened one Saturday afternoon. Eleanor Mae had invited him to a small crafts fair held in the park, hosted by the community center. She was helping run the bake sale table, and he was supposed to keep an eye on things and occasionally offer his Elvis charm to draw customers. He wore a simple casual outfit, jeans, a denim jacket, and a plain t-shirt, with his sunglasses firmly in place. He thought he looked innocuous enough. The fair was bustling, filled with families, local vendors, and a surprising number of younger people browsing the handmade goods. He was helping Eleanor Mae arrange a display of knitted scarves when he felt a strange prickling sensation, the kind he knew all too well. It was the feeling of being watched, of recognition. He suddenly glanced around, his heart beginning to beat a little faster. Across the grassy path, by a stall selling handmade jewelry, a young woman stood staring at him. She was, perhaps, in her early 20s, dressed in modern clothes, and she held a camera with a long lens. Her eyes, even from that distance, looked sharp, analytical. She wasn't just idly looking, she was studying him. Elvis instinctively lowered his head, slightly adjusting his sunglasses. He turned his body, shielding himself somewhat with the scarves. He could feel her gaze burning into him. This wasn't a sweet old lady mistaking him for an impersonator. This was someone who knew, or at least suspected. Eleanor Mae, oblivious, nudged him. "Aaron, dear, could you help Mrs. Henderson with these jams? She's having trouble with the display." "Of course, Eleanor Mae," he said, forcing a casual tone, his voice a little tighter than usual. He moved quickly towards Mrs. Henderson's table. Putting his back to the young woman, he could still feel her eyes on him. He heard footsteps approaching, slowly, deliberately, his muscles tensed. "Excuse me," a voice said, clear and direct, just behind him. Turned slowly, putting on his most innocent, "Who me" expression. The young woman stood there, her camera hanging from her neck. She had a keen, intelligent face. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said, her eyes narrowed slightly, "but you look incredibly familiar." Elvis gave a small, polite smile. "Oh," he said, trying to sound genuinely puzzled. "I get that a lot." He gestured vaguely, hoping she'd fill in the blank for him. "Right," she said, a hint of skepticism in her tone. "Are you a professional Elvis tribute artist?" He took a deep breath. This was it, the direct question. "Yes, ma'am, I am," he said, putting on a slightly more exaggerated southern drawl, the kind he used to parody himself in early interviews. "Aaron Smith at your service." He even gave a small, deferential nod. She didn't smile, she just kept studying him, her eyes searching. "'Cause I swear from certain angles you look exactly like him. Like, exactly." Eleanor Mae chose that moment to approach, carrying a plate of cookies. "Oh, Aaron, honey, why are you hiding over here? And who's this lovely young lady?" The young woman turned her attention to Eleanor Mae, and Elvis felt a wave of relief. "Hello," she said, her professional demeanor softening slightly. "I'm Katie. I'm a photographer for the local paper. I was just admiring your friend's resemblance to Elvis Presley, Eleanor Mae being. Isn't he just wonderful? He performed for us at the last social. He's Aaron Smith, the best Elvis impersonator in all of Memphis. I tell you." Katie's eyebrows raised a fraction. She glared again. "He certainly is impressive," she said, her tone still a little too thoughtful for his liking. "Oh, Aaron would love that," Eleanor Mae interjected before he could speak. "He loves performing." He shot Eleanor Mae a quick, almost imperceptible look. She was just trying to be helpful, bless her heart. "Well," he said, feigning shyness, "if it's for the paper, sure, I suppose. Just make sure I'm looking my best, all right?" He even gave a little self-deprecating shrug. "Katie's lips," she said, raising her camera. "I'll make sure you look legendary." Her emphasis on legendary was just a little too pronounced. She took several shots. Him posing by the bake sale. Him laughing with Eleanor Mae. Him pretending to strum the air guitar. With each click of the shutter, Elvis felt a surge of adrenaline. He maintained his Aaron persona, perfectly adopting a slight stiffness, a carefully cultivated tribute artist's charm, rather than his own fluid. Natural charisma. He wasn't Elvis. He was Aaron pulled. He was Aaron playing Elvis. Kay was intensely lowered her camera. She exchanged a few more pleasantries with Eleanor Mae, then walked away. Her steps purposeful. Elvis watched her go, a knot of unease. In his stomach, had she bought it? Had he been convincing enough, or had she seen through the carefully constructed facade? He felt a sudden, desperate urge to disappear, to vanish back into the quiet anonymity of Graceland. "Wasn't that exciting, Aaron?" Eleanor Mae said, patting his arm. "Your picture in the paper." He forced a smile. "Exciting indeed, Eleanor Mae," he mumbled, his mind already racing, plotting how to prevent those photos from ever seeing the light of day. He had to ensure that the bubble he'd built around Eleanor Mae, the beautiful, innocent world of Aaron Smith, remained intact. The secret, which had become a cherished connection, now felt like a fragile glass threatening to shatter. He had to protect it. The encounter with Katie, the young photographer, left Elvis with a lingering sense of unease. He immediately tasked one of his most trusted aides with discreetly contacting the local newspaper, making an anonymous inquiry about the Crafts Fair photos, perhaps even hinting at buying the rights to them for a personal collection. He couldn't risk a single picture of Aaron Smith showing up in print. Not when Aaron Smith looked so undeniably like Elvis Presley. The aide, ever discreet, managed to confirm the photos were held and would not be published, citing technical difficulties with the file. A sigh of relief escaped him, but the close call had shaken him. The weight of the secret, which had once felt like a liberating adventure, now pressed down on him. He was deeply fond of Eleanor Mae. Their bond had grown into something truly special, a genuine connection that brought a warmth to his often lonely life. He loved seeing her joy when he visited, her genuine appreciation for his presence. Not his fame, but the fear of discovery was constant. Every time he stepped out of his car, every time he spoke to a stranger near Eleanor Mae, he felt a flicker of anxiety. What if someone recognized him? What if Eleanor Mae, through some chance remark or news report, suddenly put the pieces together? He imagined her face, the realization dawning in her eyes. Would she feel betrayed? Foolish? Would the pure, untainted joy she found in his impersonation turn into disappointment, or worse, anger? The thought twisted his gut. Couldn't bear to hurt her, to tarnish the beautiful, innocent world they had built together. He found himself scrutinizing his own words, his gestures. Was he too Elvis? Was his voice too distinctive? He tried to dial himself back, to be even more of Aaron, the charming, humble tribute artist. But sometimes when he was truly comfortable, truly lost in conversation with Eleanor Mae, the king would slip out, a spontaneous laugh, a particular turn of phrase. He'd catch himself and immediately backtrack, covering his tracks, but the close calls were exhausting. One afternoon, sitting with Eleanor Mae on their usual park bench, she spoke of her late husband, Frank. "He was such an honest man, Aaron," she said, her gaze distant. "Always told the truth, no matter how hard it was. He said secrets, they just weigh you down. They eat at your soul. Elvis flinched. Her words, so innocent, struck him like a physical blow. He felt the secret churning inside him, a heavy, uncomfortable mess. Was he being dishonest? Was he eating at his own soul? He wasn't trying to deceive her maliciously. He was trying to protect a fragile, precious connection. But still, it was a lie, however benevolent. "Do you ever think," he began slowly, his voice hesitant, "that sometimes a secret, even a big one, might be for the best if it protects someone or keeps them from pain?" Eleanor Mae considered this, her brow furrowing slightly. She hummed. "Depends on the secret, I suppose, and who it's protecting you from being truly known. Then, no, I don't think that's for the best. Being truly known, Aaron, that's a gift." She reached out and patted his hand. "Don't you ever be afraid to let people see the real you." His heart ached. She saw a version of the real him, a true connection. But it was built on a foundation that wasn't entirely true. He felt a desperate urge to confess, to lay bare his identity, to tell her everything. Imagine the shock, the surprise, the disbelief. He imagined the headlines, the chaos that would ensue. He imagined Eleanor Mae being swarmed by reporters, her quiet life shattered. No, he couldn't do it. The cost was too high for both of them. He had entered this charade for his own peace, but he had stayed for hers. He had to protect her. He had to protect their shared bubble of normalcy. The thought of revealing the truth, of shattering her blissful ignorance, became a heavy burden. He cared for her too much to risk. He had seen the way fame could destroy innocence, could turn genuine affection into a hungry demand. He wouldn't let that happen to Eleanor Mae. He started to think about the future. How long could this go on? Could he maintain the charade indefinitely? He was Elvis Presley. He had a career, a life that pulled him in a million different directions. Sooner or later, he would have to leave, or something would inevitably give way. The thought of that farewell, the inevitable end to his time. As Aaron filled him with a quiet dread, he realized he had become deeply attached to this secret life, to this woman who saw beyond the rhinestone suit, and into his heart. He looked at Eleanor Mae, her hair like spun silver in the afternoon sun, her eyes still sparkling with life. He had brought her joy, and she had given him a profound gift, the gift of being seen, truly seen, not as an idol but as a man, and that gift was worth any secret. Any burden, he would carry it. For her, he had to. The secret was heavy. The summer days began to shorten, and with the cooler air came a quiet urgency to Elvis's secret life. As Aaron, he knew his obligations would soon pick up the demands of his career, making it harder and harder to slip away. The secret, though heavy, was also precious, and he wanted to cherish every moment he had left with Eleanor Mae. One crisp autumn afternoon, Eleanor Mae invited him to her apartment for tea. She seemed a little more subdued than usual, a thoughtful expression on her face. "Aaron," she began, after they had settled into her comfortable armchairs, her hands clasped in her lap, "I have a special request for you. It's a bit personal, but I wouldn't ask just anyone." "Anything, Eleanor Mae," he said gently. "You know that?" She took a deep breath. "My grandson, Jimmy, he's getting married next month. A small ceremony, just family and close friends, at the little church down the street. It's where Frank and I were married, you know." Her eyes welled up slightly. "And Jimmy's fiancée, Sarah, she's a lovely girl. They're both such good kids." She paused, looking at him with a hopeful, almost pleading expression. "And it would mean the world to me, to them, to have it sung by someone with such heart." Elvis felt a jolt. A wedding in a church. His heart pounded against his ribs. This was a step beyond a community hall social. This was deeply personal, intimate, and carried a weight of emotional significance that was immense. It was also an even bigger risk. Churches were public places. Weddings often had guests from all walks of life. The chance of someone recognizing him, of the secret shattering, would be higher than ever. Then he saw the hopeful, vulnerable look in Eleanor Mae's eyes. This wasn't just a request. It was a plea from her heart, a desire to weave a piece of her enduring love story into the fabric of her grandson's new beginning, and she wanted him, Aaron Smith, to be the one to do it. He thought of Frank, of the faded photograph of Eleanor Mae's tears when she spoke of their song. He thought of the pure, untainted joy he had found in their connection. Could he refuse her this? Could he say no to helping her bestow such a meaningful gift on her family? He looked at her, truly looked at her, and saw not just an old woman, but a beacon of kindness, a source of genuine peace in his often turbulent life. He owed her more than just a polite refusal. He owed her everything this connection had given him. "Eleanor Mae," he said, his voice soft but firm. "It would be my absolute honor." Her face lit up, brighter than he had seen it in weeks. "Oh, Aaron, you truly are an angel. I knew you would say yes. Jimmy and Sarah will be so touched. It will be the most beautiful gift." She clasped his hand, squeezing it tightly. "It means so much to me, dear." He knew exactly how much it meant, and he knew the risk he was taking. But he had come to a realization. This bond with Eleanor Mae was more important than protecting his celebrity status. If the truth came out, so be it. But he would not deny her this final, poignant request. Over the next few weeks, he prepared as if for his most important concert. He practiced "Love Me Tender" over and over, not just the notes, but the feeling, the emotion, the story he knew it held for Eleanor Mae. He wanted to make it perfect, a truly heartfelt offering. He even visited the church discreetly, checking the acoustics, envisioning a small, intimate space. The day of the wedding dawned cool and bright. Elvis arrived early, dressed in a simple, respectful suit. He avoided the main entrance, slipping in through a side door he'd scouted, hoping to minimize his exposure before the ceremony began. He found a seat in the back, observing the small gathering of family and friends. Eleanor Mae sat in the front row, beaming, dressed in her best floral dress. When it came time for the special music, Jimmy, the groom, approached the microphone. "Before my grandmother gives her reading," he announced, "we have a very special surprise, someone who means a lot to her and whose voice will add a beautiful touch to our day. Please welcome Aaron Smith." Elvis stood up, his heart thrumming. He walked down the aisle, feeling every eye on him, but his gaze was fixed on Eleanor Mae. He reached the altar, nodded to the minister, and faced the small congregation. He saw Jimmy and Sarah looking at him with curiosity, then surprise, then smiles. They recognized the resemblance. He took a breath, and then his voice, rich and tender, filled the small church. "Love me tender, love me sweet, never let me go. You have made my life complete, and I love you." So, he sang with every fiber of his being, pouring all his affection for Eleanor Mae, all the silent gratitude for their unique friendship into each note. He imagined Frank and Eleanor Mae dancing, young and in love. He sang for Jimmy and Sarah, for their future together. He sang for the pure, enduring power of love itself. He saw tears in Eleanor Mae's eyes, and in the eyes of many in the congregation. He saw Jimmy reach for Sarah's hand, their fingers intertwining. He saw a few knowing glances shared among the older folks, perhaps recognizing the uncanny resemblance, perhaps just appreciating the beauty of the song. When he finished, the silence in the church was profound, broken only by a few sniffles, then a wave of applause, soft at first, then growing in warmth and sincerity. It was a standing ovation, not for a celebrity, but for a beautiful moment, a heartfelt gift. He bowed, his eyes meeting Eleanor Mae's. Her smile was radiant, her eyes overflowing with gratitude. He knew in that moment that this was one of the most important performances of his life. He hadn't just sung a song. He had woven a living thread between generations, between past and present, between love and memory. And he had done it all as Aaron Smith, a secret act of love. The wedding performance was a triumph, a moment of pure, unadulterated connection. After the ceremony, Elvis, still as Aaron, was embraced by Eleanor Mae, who whispered her thanks repeatedly, her eyes shining. Jimmy and Sarah also approached him, expressing their deep gratitude. "You really made our day, Aaron," Jimmy said, shaking his hand firmly. "That was just incredible. My grandmother said you were good, but I had no idea." "It was so beautiful," Sarah added, a genuine softness in her voice. "Thank you for such a special gift." He mingled for a short while, accepting compliments, feeling a profound satisfaction. He even took a few photos with Eleanor Mae and the newlyweds, careful to position himself so his face wasn't too directly captured. The risk had been immense, but the reward, the pure joy he had brought, was immeasurable. But as the day waned and the reception wound down, a familiar melancholy began to settle over Elvis. He knew his time. As Aaron Smith was nearing its end, his official schedule was beginning to fill up, demanding his return to the public eye, to the relentless demands of his fame. He couldn't keep this secret life going indefinitely. The bittersweet reality of their situation pressed in. He found Eleanor Mae by herself, looking out a window at the setting sun, a quiet smile on her face. "Eleanor Mae," he said, his voice soft. She turned, she said warmly. "Still here? I thought you'd be off to your next gig by now." He managed a small, sad smile. "No, not yet. I just wanted to talk to you." He took a deep breath. "I wanted to say thank you for everything, for letting me be a part of your life even for a little while." Her brow furrowed slightly. "What's this, dear? You sound like you're leaving for good." He looked at his hands, then back at her kind, knowing eyes. "I am Eleanor Mae," he admitted, the words catching in his throat. My tour is starting up again, a big one. It's going to take me away for a long time. Different cities, different countries. I won't be able to come back to Memphis for quite a while." Her face fell just a little. The light in her eyes dimmed. "I see. Well, that's the life of an artist, isn't it? Always on the move." She nodded slowly, bravely. "I understand, Aaron. You have a gift, and you must share it with the world." The guilt gnawed at him. He was lying, and she was so understanding, so accepting. He wanted to tell her just once who he truly was, but he couldn't. He looked at her frail, dignified face, and he knew it would break the innocent bubble, shattering the precious memory of Aaron Smith. He had to protect her. "I'll miss our talks," he said, his voice husky with genuine emotion. "I'll miss the park and the cookies and our little gatherings at the hall." She smiled, a fragile but sincere smile. "Me too, dear, more than you know. You brought a light into my life, Aaron, a warmth I hadn't felt since Frank." Her voice trembled slightly. "You reminded me of what it feels like to have someone truly listen, truly care." His heart clenched. He wanted to tell her that it wasn't an act, that his listening and caring were real, but he couldn't. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet-covered box. It wasn't anything flashy, not diamonds or gold. He'd found it in an antique store and had it painstakingly restored. "I wanted to give you something," he said, handing it to her. "A small thank you. Something to remember our time by." Eleanor Mae took the box, her fingers trembling slightly as she opened it. Inside, a tiny ballerina twirled and a soft, clear melody filled the air. It was "Can't Help Falling in Love." Her eyes widened, filling with fresh tears. "Aaron," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "It's beautiful, and it's Elvis's song. Oh, my dear boy." She looked up at him, a profound gratitude in her gaze. "You didn't have to." "Yes, I did," he said, his voice firm. "It's from my heart, Eleanor Mae, just like the songs I sang for you." She closed the music box, then reached out and gently cupped his cheek. Her touch was soft, warm, and utterly sincere. "You are truly a remarkable young man, Aaron Smith," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Don't you ever forget that, no matter where the road takes you, no matter who you have to pretend to be for the crowds, remember the goodness in your heart. That's the real magic." He leaned into her touch, letting himself feel the warmth, the genuine affection. He knew this was their farewell. He wouldn't be able to come back, not without risking everything. "Goodbye, Eleanor Mae," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for everything." "Goodbye, Aaron," she replied, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "You take care of yourself, dear, and don't ever stop singing." He held her gaze for a long moment, imprinting her kind face, her wise eyes, her gentle spirit into his memory. Then he turned and walked away out of the church, out of the community hall, and back into the world that waited for Elvis Presley. As he drove away, leaving Memphis's quiet, unassuming streets behind, he felt a profound sense of loss, but also a deep peace. Eleanor Mae had given him a gift far greater than any fan adulation or financial success. She had given him a space to be truly human, to connect without judgment, to feel the pure, unburdened joy of sharing his talent. She had reminded him of the simple, powerful impact of his music on individual lives, the very essence of why he sang. He was still the king, the legend. But a quiet, unassuming old woman had for a brief, precious time allowed him to be just Aaron Smith. And for that, he would be eternally grateful. Eleanor Mae would go on cherishing the memory of the best Elvis impersonator she had ever known, completely unaware that she had been touched by the king himself in a way far more personal and profound than any concert could ever be. And Elvis, forever changed, would carry the warmth of their secret bond in his heart, a quiet melody playing beneath the roar of fame.